Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies. Also, thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We're going to have a great show for you today. I was kind of late coming back from KPFT as we got into a discussion about all kind of systems, including democratic socialism and all those kinds of things we were discussing. And I said, you know what? I start talking policy. Mostly I try not to talk ideology specific to things like democratic socialism. So I don't know. But we had a great conversation. Anyhow, folks, we got a show for you today. I got to get it started quickly because what I'm doing is I'm playing the interview that I did with Medea Benjamin, which I hadn't done before, from the KPFT show a few days ago. And after that one, I will be playing a few other things. Welcome aboard, Bridge MCP. Welcome aboard, Melanie Keelan. Welcome aboard, Robert Davenport. E2247, how are you doing? Lee Grant is in the house as well. And of course, the one and only Michael Rutnan. I thought I saw somebody else, but let's see. Hey, Melanie Keelan, nice to see you the other day. It was great seeing you guys at the Ask Egberto Anything. I want to get this one played so that we can have some discussion afterward. From Michael Rudnan, The Hill, Trump calls for termination of election rules in Constitution to overturn 2020 election. Trump is a wannabe dictator who lost a fair and election, and he's showing the nation what he is yet again as he desperately clings to power while trying to avoid prison time. Any MAGA supporters in this room shouldn't have faith in guys who's outright telling you he wants to throw out the Constitution. He's been telling us that for a long time. Hi, Egberto. Looking great today. You are. Thank you so kindly, my brother. By the way, I went to the doctor this morning, 7:45. Pressure went down. Just to give you guys a checkup. Went from 193 over 133. That was my pressure, man. 193 over 133. And today, 138 over 90. We still need to get a little bit better, but that is a far cry from what it was before. And on my way to the studio, to the KPFT, I stopped at Fiesta. Man, I felt like I was back in Panama with all the great food that they had. But anyhow, let's go ahead and get started with the show. Have Code Pink on, and then we'll move on from there. Here we go. Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being here. Today, we have a very, very, very special guest. In the house with us is the one and only founder of Code Pink, Medea Benjamin. She's with us. She's now she is the author of Is Peace Possible in Ukraine? And also this morning I got up and reading Common Dreams, found an article blazing with the kind of info we need about Ukraine called The 8 Steps. What is it called again? What does it start? Where am I? It's called The 8. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll let her talk about it. But Madea Benjamin, welcome to Politics Done Right. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. I think you're referring to the 8 reasons why now is a good time to call for negotiations in Ukraine.
Absolutely.
Anytime is a good time.
You know, I woke up this morning and that's one of the first places I normally check. And I checked on it and it's like there. But anyway, great to have you on Politics Done Right, Medea. I think the last time I saw you was in Wisconsin at the Democracy Convention. How has it been since then?
Well, it's one would have hoped that we would have been in a time of peace after the U.S. got out of Afghanistan. But it looks like there's always another war to follow one war that ends.
Well,
And so here we are.
you know how that is. Well, in the house with us is Joe Marcinskowski, who was generous enough to get us all connected for all that we're going to be doing over the stint that you're going to be placing here in Harris County, the Houston area. So, Joe, welcome to Politics Done Right as well.
It's wonderful to be here. I'm with the Houston Peace and Justice Center. I'm the chair of the Military Foreign Policy Work Group. One of the things we did was co-found the Foreign Policy Alliance here in Houston, and those two groups, Houston Peace and Justice and the Foreign Policy, are promoting this effort today, and we're really excited about having Medea in for this extended weekend. Good to see you. It's been a while since I've seen you. It was the Left Forum in Brooklyn just before the COVID. How you doing, Medea?
Good. It's nice getting out again and seeing friends and talking about such important issues and seeing what people are doing in different areas of the country and how we can build up more opposition to this blank check for endless war.
Well, look, it's great having you here. Now, Madea, I have before we go into, I want to discuss your article, because I think that article presented something that is timely and something that we need to get into. But beforehand, I want to talk a little bit about your book. Give us sort of the genesis of it. Why did you write it? Why did you give it the title that you gave it, especially in these times?
My co-author and I had been writing about Ukraine before the war began. We really didn't think that there was going to be an invasion. And when it did happen, we realized that this might be something that could go on for quite a long time, and that the American people need to understand the context of this war. And we knew it was going to be a very complicated one for people to wrap their heads around and figure out that there were two wars going on, one in which the Russians were the aggressor and went into another sovereign country, and another geopolitical war in which the U.S. was laying the groundwork for this to happen. And the reason we called it a senseless war is because it could have been stopped so many different times, including right up the months before the war started, when the Russians put out a peace plan and tried to negotiate, but the U.S. and NATO totally dismissed their calls for negotiations. So this is a war foretold many years ago. As we lay out in the book, there's so many times since 1991 and the dissolution of the Soviet Union that academics and diplomats and others kept saying, bad move, expansion of NATO, this is not going to be good. Russia's going to be stuck in a bad position. They're calling it a red line. They're going to retaliate. And here we are.
Well, you use two delineations right there. First, an invasion, and second, a provocation. Why don't you expand on that? Because I think if one listens to just the narrative that we hear in the United States, we have the glory, glory, hallelujah, the folks who want and love democracy, and an evil empire that's coming in to invade. You're saying it's a lot more. There's a lot more that one needs to go into before just making that simplistic assessment. So why don't you expand on those two that you actually just brought up?
Well, that's right, because you hear from the Biden administration and from the mainstream media these two words constantly, unjustified and unprovoked. And we say, hold on a minute. This was certainly provoked, and it certainly is unjustified in that invading Ukraine was not the way to deal with it. But we've been provoking Russia for a long time now, and I mentioned the 1991, which was the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And there are many people who still deny that the U.S. actually made an agreement with Russia that we would not expand NATO eastward. And yet there's so many documents saying that this was indeed the case, that it was very clear that Secretary James Baker talked to Gorbachev, but not only Baker, there were many other officials who did as well, making that same kind of pledge. And yet when you see the kind of expansion that took place over the years and how Russia was basically surrounded by NATO countries, we say that definitely was a tremendous provocation, especially since NATO is not, something we also hear in the mainstream media, a defensive alliance. It's an aggressive military alliance. And this was proven by the fact that NATO has gone all over the world, very far from the North Atlantic, to invade and bomb other countries. So there was great reason why Russia was very upset with NATO for this expansion and felt threatened by it.
Yeah, Joe. Well, let me ask you this, Madea, because most of the people that are listening to what you have to say would look at that as, my God, you're speaking up against democracy. You're speaking up by making a statement like that. You're almost justifying that Russia had some real or legitimate reason to go into to Ukraine. I don't think that's what you're saying. I think what you're saying is that geopolitically speaking, and that's what you mentioned when you first started, is that geopolitically speaking, one has to take into account positions of power. One has to take into account borders of power. So please expand on that.
Yes, absolutely. I keep saying it's unjustified. It's brutal. It's inhumane. It's illegal. The invasion is horrific, and the Ukrainian people every day are suffering the consequences. But it's important to understand the context, because then that is the only way we can look towards what are the solutions. And putting it in the context also has to be the fact that the U.S. was so heavily involved in the internal affairs of Ukraine when there was a spontaneous democratic uprising in 2014 that turned violent and resulted in the overthrow of a, yes, corrupt, but yes, elected government, turning a government from one that was pro-Russia to one that was pro-West. The U.S. was heavily involved in that. And we have the proof of it from a leaked phone conversation that the Assistant Secretary of State, Victoria Nuland, was actually plotting who would be the next leader of Ukraine. And then the following years, we have the U.S. and NATO pouring weapons into that country, training the military. So that context is important. You know, nobody wants interference in the internal affairs of another country. And certainly the U.S. has been doing it all over the world. But Ukraine is one example where right on Russia's border, you have the U.S. so heavily involved that it really decides who is going to be the leader of Ukraine. I don't think you can deny the U.S. interference.
Madea is going to be in town. Madea, you're going to be in town several days, given your talk throughout Houston. So Joe is going to tell us about how they can come see you.
Tomorrow, December 3rd at 7 p.m., she'll be at the Houston Mennonite Church on Worth Road. On Sunday, she'll be at First UU Church on Fannin from 2 to 4. Monday, she'll be at the Bay Area UU Church on El Camino Real down in Clear Lake from 7 to 9. And on Tuesday, she'll be at Lone Star College up in Kingwood, be presenting to a live audience there, and it's going to be live streamed by Roberto here to the other 6 campuses, and PEX Christie, Texas will be on the feed too.
Absolutely so. So, Madea, you have a busy schedule when you come here to Houston. I hope you're eating your Wheaties.
Well, you know, it's energizing after writing the book and being able to get out on the road and talk to people about it. That's why we wrote the book. We certainly didn't write it to make any money, because you don't make money from these books. What you do is really educate people. And at a time when people are so confused and having a difficult time wrapping their head around what's the best thing, how can we avoid a nuclear war, how can we avoid a larger war, and how can we stop the brutality that's going on now, it is so important to get out and talk to people and brainstorm together. What are the ways that we can affect change? How can we put pressure on elected officials? Where do things stand with the Democrat and Republican Party? What's going to happen when this next round of $37 billion is going to be voted on in Congress? So there's a lot of things to talk about.
Now, before I really want to kind of go into the guts of that article that you wrote for Common Dreams. Before that, I want to invite other people to come in if they want to. This is a subject. I mean, it's funny that you just said, I write books to really inform, but I don't really write books to make a lot of money, because especially in political books and this sort of a stuff, Medea, it is difficult as hell. You have to be out there, but I get it. Let's talk about I think it was the overthrow that occurred in Joe. What year was the overthrow?
2014.
2014.
February. Yeah.
Right. What was the genesis of that? Because I think one of the tenets that you're saying is that United States involvement, the bulk of the United States involvement culminated with that overthrow. And did you want to add something to that, Joe, or?
Well, basically, the U.S. was heavily involved in funding the overthrow of the Ukraine government. Yushchenko was a corrupt, but he was elected a president of the country, and he tried to cut a deal with Europe where he would get similar treatment to what the Russians were offering, and the deal wasn't good enough. So he went back and made a deal with the Russians, and that freaked out the Ukrainians and the United States. Yes, and we helped overthrow that. There's a telephone conversation between Victoria Nuland speaking to the U.S. ambassador, describing who she wants to put in there. And when the ambassador says, well, hey, the EU doesn't want that, she says, well, tell the EU to go F themselves. And that type of involvement that we do in these countries it's horrendous. It does nothing but destroy any hope for redemption in these situations. And we keep funding it. She had $5 million at hand that she bragged about. And it goes on and goes on. And, Medea just brought up the $37 billion. What does that bring? $100 billion? And what's that for? We're feeding oligarchs in this country that run military-industrial complexes. That's what it's all about.
What's your thoughts on that, Medea?
Well, yeah. So, I like to think of Victoria Nuland as she's outside with the protesters giving out sandwiches and cookies, and think, what if on January 6th, when the right-wing Republicans were trying to storm the Congress and overthrow our government, there was a Russian diplomat that went out there to hand out some goodies to people and say, yeah, go get them, overthrow the government. I mean, it's just inconceivable that would happen here in the U.S., but the U.S. does that and did that. And so, yes, it is so important that people understand the extent, which we really don't know. These U.S. has been involved in coups all over the world, and it takes us many years after the fact to get the information about how involved the U.S. We have to do these Freedom of Information Act requests. But finally, when it comes out, we see the intimate use of the funds that Joe just talked about, how it's given to different groups, creating new groups, manipulating peaceful protests. And that's precisely what happened in the case of Ukraine.
Absolutely. So on the internet, Bridge asked just now, or giving us some news. She says, Putin refuses to negotiate with U.S. on ending war. Russia's President Vladimir Putin has again refused to negotiate with U.S. on ending the war in Ukraine. Mr. Putin is open to talks on a possible settlement in Ukraine, but the West must accept Moscow's demand. The Kremlin said on Friday. The Kremlin's response comes a day after U.S. President Joe Biden has said he is ready to speak with Mr. Putin if the Russian president is interested in ending the war with Ukraine, as he sought to alleviate European anger over U.S. subsidies. As somebody who wrote, "Is peace possible in Ukraine?" What's your thought on that? That just hit the wire a few minutes ago.
Well, I don't think there is. If Biden wants to talk to Putin, he would have been talking to Putin, and he would talk to Putin. He has said with many conditions, including that he won't, that Ukraine has to be agreeable to it, that NATO has to be agreeable to it, and that Russia has to say we're ready to end this war. I say that they should be talking to each other. They should have been talking to each other a long time ago. That we are calling on our president to talk to Putin, that we are calling on our Secretary of State to talk to his counterpart in Russia, and we want to see it happen. We don't want them to be going back and forth saying, how are we going to stop this war from expanding? Because, while that is absolutely critical, the real critical issue is how do we stop the fighting right now? Because we saw that missile that went into Poland and killed 2 people, and there was all kinds of reports, including the AP wire service, that said it came from Russia, and this was potentially the beginning of a Third World War. Luckily, the Polish head of state said no, it did not come from Russia. It came from Ukraine. And so a crisis at that moment was averted. But that's just one potential errant missile. And there will be more. And maybe one will come from Russia. So we have to recognize how dangerous this situation is, how it's a more dangerous situation than the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Exactly.
And that we have to recognize that just talking about talks is not good enough. We want real talks.
Joe, why don't you tell us again where people can come visit Medea as she gives her talks throughout Houston, the several days that we're going to be here.
Okay, tomorrow, Houston Mennonite Church, 7 p.m. at 1231 Worth Road. Sunday, on Fannin, the First UU Church, it'll be at 2 to 4. Monday, Clear Lake area, Bay Area UU Church, from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And you can go up to Lone Star College or just get on a feed. Alberto's offering the feed, and it'll be available to you to get onto. It's a YouTube feed, isn't it?
It's a YouTube feed. And if I can tell them the URL, if you go to politicsdoneright.com/Medea, politicsdoneright.com/Medea, Medea is spelled MEDEA. So it's politicsdoneright.com/MEDEA. You will be able to go ahead and watch the live stream it's on Tuesday at 12:30 Central, correct? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Tuesday at 12:30 Central. So, Madea, you're going to be doing, the great thing about having you in town putting this message out there is, just like you said, the mainstream media has a narrative, and everybody picks up on that narrative, and it's sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy that occurs when we have it this way. The same thing that occurred, I don't know if of course you remember, the Iraq War, etc. We constantly create these narratives, and it's then generally hard to get it out of the psyche of people. Your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are that what the narrative is that this is a winnable war by the Ukrainians, and that if we just send them enough weapons, enough money, that they will be able to take back every inch of territory that Russia has claimed in the Donbass and Crimea, while the people in our own Pentagon, who I must say are used to losing wars because they've been doing that for quite a while, they are saying this is not a winnable war. They can't win on the battlefield. And they should, as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has said, seize the moment and go from the battlefield to the negotiating table. So if the people in the Pentagon understand this, that should trickle down or up, or sideways to the people in the White House and to our Secretary of State.
Well, interestingly, the European Union, they have a much more negative assessment as far as whether one can win the war, whether Ukraine can win the war. I mean, just the math alone tells you otherwise, right? I mean, Russia doesn't have to have highly technical equipment to really keep Ukraine in trouble. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about your paper, because I found the paper fascinating. You had these 8 reasons why we should go to for peace. The first one is you want to read that first, the first topic, Joe?
The first and most urgent reason is the incredible daily deaths and suffering in Ukraine, and the chance to save millions more Ukrainians from being forced to leave their homes, their belongings, and the conscripted men folk that we may never see again.
Tell us about that.
Well, I think number one in all of this is what's happening to the Ukrainians. And they're being killed, they're being forced to flee their homes, and about 10 million of them, which is a third of the population, are now facing winter without adequate electricity, energy, water. And this is misery, and it must be stopped. And I think those who say that talking to Putin is going against the best interests of the Ukrainians are wrong, because they're the ones suffering from this.
And, interestingly, Madea, the other issue is what it has done to the school cycle and all of that. It just simply takes away years from, it's going to be a year from the developmental stages of these kids and much more, and much more. What's the second one that...
Neither side can achieve a decisive military victory, and with its recent military gains, Ukraine is in a good negotiating position.
Your thoughts?
I'm sorry.
That's right. The item 2 is neither side can achieve a decisive military victory, and with its recent military gains, Ukraine is in a good negotiating position, which is what you claim, I think, also in your book.
Well, right. That it's quite remarkable that Ukraine has been able to push back on so many fronts, but Russia still controls 20% of the territory, and they have fortified their areas along the Donbass, and they have tremendous strength in Crimea as well. And let's also let the audience understand, your listeners understand, that Crimea, which is a contested area, has been under Russia control for 200 years, in fact, longer than it's been under Ukrainian control. So there are a lot of people inside Crimea that identify with Russia, that are Russian speakers, and that want to be part of Russia. So it's not rational to say that every inch will be returned to Ukraine and that it can be done on the battlefield.
Next one.
U.S. government officials, especially in the Republican Party, are starting to balk at the prospects of continuing this enormous level of military and economic support. We talked about $100 billion a few minutes ago, but only about 30% of the weapons are actually getting into the hands of the Ukrainians. There's a tremendous black market out there. There's a real good article in Ukrainska Pravda. It's a Ukrainian media group talking about the Monaco battalion. These are oligarchs living in Monaco on the Côte d'Ivoire, where they're living on yachts and big, beautiful homes, and they're getting fantastic amount of money coming in from these black markets that are going through there. So as taxpayers, we got to be upset about this. Go ahead, Medea, why don't you add to that, please?
Well, yes, we've already sent, there was one tranche of money that was $40 billion. There was another that was $13 billion. There's now $37 billion that's being asked for with no end in sight. Yeah. And as Joe said, we don't know where so many of these weapons are going when there are some Republicans who have asked for a inspector general to be set up to monitor where these weapons are going and have some auditing. The White House didn't want to do that. We know in the past when we have sent weapons and flooded places like Afghanistan and Iraq with weapons, what we got was Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And we have no idea who is buying weapons on the black market. So there has to be an outcry. And so far, that outcry is only coming from a small group of Republicans, but not from any of the Democrats.
Yeah, Medea, when you said we don't know who's buying things, when these HIMARS, the missiles that are so precious to us, were sent over there, one of the first HIMARS was bought on the black market by the Russians for $150,000. So they had our weaponry before the Ukrainians had it.
Yeah, it is amazing. Now, Medea, the fourth item you're talking about, the war is causing upheavals in Europe, which is true. There's one piece of that article that I kind of said, the only thing that I wanted to add to that number 4 part that you did was that we shouldn't give the corporations a pass with just using Ukraine as one of the sole causes of inflation. I saw that in the article and I said, she's right, but God, please don't give those corporations a break. Your thoughts on number 4 that said the war is causing upheavals in Europe, including that of inflation.
Well, yes, the Europeans are really suffering from the sanctions that their own governments have imposed on Russia. And while Russia is still getting a lot of money in from selling its energy to other countries, the Europeans who are relying on the energy from Russia are having to buy it from other sources, including from the United States, at 4 or 5 times the price that the Americans are paying. And so Russians are speaking out and saying the U.S. is profiting from this war. The dirty energy companies in the U.S. are trying to fill the vacuum from the Russian energy. And they're also, the Europeans, complaining that the U.S. is profiting from the increased amount of money that the European countries are now spending on the military, because a lot of that money is just going back to U.S. weapons manufacturers. And then in terms of the Russian population, they're bearing the brunt of this. And we see big demonstrations that are happening in a number of different countries where people are going out on the streets. And they're saying that the cost of of heating our homes is beyond our reach at this point, the cost in the grocery stores. And yet here we are giving all this money to Ukraine and imposing these sanctions that are hurting us. So it's affecting politically the countries in Europe and affecting the people, of course, in a very negative way.
Let me just correct you there. You said the Russian people. I think you were talking about the EU people. People in Europe are suffering. And one other thing is that when we passed that inflation bill a while ago, we had lots of money to enhance us bringing in European industries into the United States. And a lot of them, because they don't have cheap energy anymore, are moving their operations over here. Battery companies, car industries, and this is killing Germany. Germany is dead unless they do something. And I know
right, and that's another thing they're complaining so much about is you're taking companies that have been providing jobs for us in Europe and enticing them to come to the United States because of low energy prices.
Exactly. Medea, we have about 3 more minutes. Altogether, what would you like? How would you like to frame what Americans need to know to make this a better situation, if you will?
They need to know that the message that is coming from Congress and from certain parts of the White House are putting us in the situation of funding another unwinnable war that is not in the interest of the American people, and that our representatives are not representing us. Yeah. And so we need to organize more, whether we call ourselves left, right, Republican, Democrat, independent, libertarian, whatever, and get our voices heard by those who control the purse strings and have the power in this country, so that they really reflect not only our needs, but what's in the best interest of the entire region, of Ukraine, of Europe, and to the world, because as long as we keep spending hundreds of billions of dollars on weapons and war and close to $1 trillion on the Pentagon, we will not have enough money to address either the needs at home, like health care and a good education system that doesn't put our young people in debt, or dealing with the climate crisis that really is the existential threat for humanity. Yes, the name of the book, I just wanted to clarify, is War in Ukraine, Making Sense of a Senseless War. And I'm really looking forward to being in the Houston area to have the kind of discussions that we've just had now, which are very rich and important, and to get beyond the mainstream narrative. The kind of discussion we've had here is something that you won't hear on CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News. So thank you much for this radio station. And please come out and let's keep the discussion going and figure out ways that we can be a positive force in trying to end this war.
Madea, it's been my pleasure to have you on air with us at Politics Done Right. Now, let me ask Joe to give you a bye-bye. Go ahead, Joe.
All right, Medea, we're looking forward to seeing you. I do need the times that you're going to be flying in to be sure to pick you up. I haven't heard that yet. It's scaring me. But Saturday, you're going to be at the Houston Mennonite Church from 7 till 9. Sunday, you're going to be at the First UU Church in 5200 Fadden Street from 2 to 4. Monday, you'll be at the Bay Area UU Church from 7 to 9 p.m. And Tuesday, well, you'll be at Kingwood College from 12:30 to 2:30, speaking on a live stream that Liberto's set up on YouTube. And I guess if it's on YouTube, we'll be able to see that for indefinitely.
Around the world, and we'll keep it indefinitely. We'll clean it up, of course, and make sure it's all there. Madea, it's been our pleasure to have you here at KPFT 90.1 FM Houston. You have a wonderful day, and we can't wait to see you in person.
Great.
Okay, thanks so much for having me on. Look forward to being there.
Absolutely. Bye. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can. I love Medea. Again, I met her a couple of times at several different conferences where we had some good conversation. Anyway, let's continue with the show. You guys had good commentary under there. Bottom line is yes. It's probably time for a piece. Robert Davenport says, Madea made some great points. However, they all became moot once the invasion began. NATO has expanded because of the invasion. That is Russia's doing. We must not go backwards now. Victory to Ukraine. Yep, I want Ukraine to win. Absolutely so. Now, one thing that I do want to say about Ukraine, however, is I don't want people to fall into the framework, glory, glory, hallelujah for Ukraine, because Ukraine suffers from a lot of the ills that a lot of these European countries suffer from. I still can recall the Nigerian and Ghanaian students in Ukraine trying to leave at the beginning of the war, and the humiliation that the officers, the military, put them through. So these issues are complex. No country is saintful, and I hope we realize that as opposed to just singing glory, glory, hallelujah to Ukraine. It is, yes, Bridge, I'm wearing the glasses that you forced me to wear. I am. So I think it is essential that we look at things for what they are. We should not allow another country to invade another. That's most definite. But also we should not deny some serious issues Ukraine themselves have. Joe Marcinskowski brought up the issue of the power of oligarchs in Ukraine, which are very strong. There's a good possibility that we lost ourselves probably over 50% of the military equipment that we sent over there. Probably quite a bit of that went on the black market. So we have to be cognizant of that. And Lee Grant is right. Ukraine has bona fide Nazis too. Absolutely, Ukraine does. The United States does as well. Let's not fool ourselves. We all have work to do. We all have work to do. Anyhow, one more video for you to see. I love what happened with El Señor Obama on Herschel Walker. Check this out. We'll take it on the other side. Obama once again was on point. We all know that Herschel Walker is pretty much a disgrace not only to politics, a disgrace not only to men, a disgrace not only to black men, a disgrace to the country. We take a look at him being a very good sports person, but that's the only virtue he brings. As far as what he has done to women, as far as what he has done to the truth, this guy is the guy that several Republicans would like to ascend to the Senate to represent them. Oh, I forgot, not to represent them, to be told what to do. You see, Herschel Walker, in his skin, he creates that template that you know whom would like to envision or have all believe that that's the representative of what certain men are. Check out how Obama took care of describing him and telling Georgians why it is that it's time now for them to go out there and not be tired, but go out there and vote what's best, not only for Georgia, but for the country.
Now, if you had forgotten what I said the last time, it's okay, because you just have to wait a minute. He reminds you every time he opens his mouth. I mean, every day. Every day he comes up with something. Every day. Since the last time I was here, Mr. Walker has been talking about issues that are of great importance to the people of Georgia. Like whether it's better to be a vampire or a werewolf. This is a debate that I must confess I once had myself. When I was 7. Then I grew up. In case you're wondering, by the way, Mr. Walker decided he wanted to be a werewolf, which is great. As far as I'm concerned, he can be anything he wants to be, except for a United States Senator. Since the last time I was here, apparently he also claimed that he used to let me beat him at basketball. But then he admitted that we've never actually met. So I guess this was more of an imaginary whooping that I laid on him. Now, listen, this would be funny if he weren't running for Senate. If Miss Cooper didn't get tired, then I can't be tired. If John Lewis, even in his 70s, wasn't tired, I got no excuses. I can't be tired. And if I'm not tired, you can't be tired. If the men and women who had to endure the sting of discrimination, the smack of belly clubs, weren't tired. If the folks who had to fight those early fights, those were the tough fights for union rights and voting rights and gay rights and women's rights, if they didn't get tired, you can't be tired. So you got to go out there and keep working. You have to stay focused. Because if you do, if you put everything you've got into the next few days, if you vote, if you get your friends to vote and your neighbors to vote, if you do all that, not only will we re-elect Raphael Warnock, not only will we keep Georgia and America on a path to a better future, But we will be setting an example for a 4-year-old right here and laying a foundation for him to build on. And that 1-year-old over there, and I know I saw a 3-month-old here, they're watching right now to see if we're going to get tired. And I'm going to tell them right now, we're not going to be tired. We're going to bring it on home. Let's make this happen, Georgia. I love you. God bless you.
I couldn't have said it any better. But there's only one orator like President Obama. But I hope folks are listening keenly, because this is a serious race. We're in serious times. And in the Senate, we require serious people. There are a few that have gotten in that shouldn't be there. 2024 and 26 should result in the extrication of those cancers. Davenport says, Herschel is just a less articulate version of Trump with athletic abilities, an empty vessel willing to do the bidding of his donors. They are the same thing, neither worthy of anybody voting for them. Wow, Davenport, if you can be a worse version of Trump, ouch! Herschel is in really, really bad shape. Bruce Pollard is in the house. Let's see. I don't think I recognize Bruce Pollard. Yvette Avery Herod is in the house. E2247 is in the house. We also have Eric Hayes and Wright. Let's see. Bruce says, hello to all today. But he also said something else that I scrolled by if I can find it. He said, I'm still afraid that somebody made a lot of money that is not earned. And that's exactly what happened in these arms sales. That's the name of the game. The higher the level of government, the higher amount of wasted money is spent. I saw it myself in all sectors, military, state, and local. And you know what? CSAC, you're right. But you know what we got to do, CSAC? We got to engage. We can stop that if we choose to. We just simply have not. The thing that politicians fear the most are we the people. And that's why they often try to silence we the people. What we can't do is be silenced. All right, one last video before my ask. Here we go.
Christie is no hero, but interesting enough, today his commentary on This Week was actually pretty good. I take a little bit of exception for Donna Brazil telling him that he has a spine. Well, Christie, while he's telling the truth in this segment here, remember that he developed a spine only after he started to see that Trump was on the decline. This wasn't something that he just that he was inspired to do. Check this out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Donald Trump in the last 3 weeks, in these between the midterms and the runoff, announces he's running for president, meets with Fuentes, meets with Kanye West Z, you're supposed to call him now, right, or Ye, whatever. Yeah. And then last night comes out for suspending the Constitution. I ask you a version of this question all the time. I don't understand why it's so difficult to come out against someone who's for suspending the Constitution.
Well, obviously, neither do I, and I think, look. This has been the most uninspiring Republican presidential announcement since Fred Thompson. I mean, everybody had this anticipation he's going to announce. Nothing has happened since then except bad things for Donald Trump, because he is being his post-2020 election untethered self. It should not be hard to say that the 2020 election is over. It should not be hard to say, no, I don't favor a revote. I don't favor the true winner, as he put it, being put into office by some extra constitutional act. This is what kills my party right now. Is this conversation this morning. We're not talking about issues that American people care about. You and I are sitting here talking about this. And we as a party need to have this open family argument in the public about whether this is the way we need to go as a party. And, we need to have that argument. We need to have it now.
Chris, you need a backbone to have that conversation.
Here's the issue. Yes, Trump is killing the GOP. That is true. The problem is there is a sect in this country that the GOP represents. It's not that the GOP becomes this way and then the people follow. It is the GOP thinking that it must fulfill the will of the people, as opposed to saying or being leaders and telling these people, this is not the way. Leaders are able to serve, and at the same time that they serve, they are able to provide the people who they serve, enhancing them to support their better angels. In other words, yes, the people may be like what the GOP has become. Their supporters may be just that. But a leader knows how to take that goodwill from the people and encourage the people to be their better selves. And that is what has been lacking throughout the GOP, not allowing the people's better selves to come out.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks, not allowing their better selves to come out. I just couldn't get it finished fast enough. Let's see. Kelly Howell says, so I've been waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Just one cowardly Republican to come forward and actually speak out and really say how they really feel and stop thinking about their own ass and stop thinking about politicians and the dollars that may lose. I really want to see their morals. I will vote for them in 2024. Stop being a P, you know what, and speak up. Kelly, they won't do it, Sister Kelly. They won't do it. Melissa Noble said, I went to trade school on government grant. The school exploited the program by charging students and filling out forms applying for grants. They made double payments. Shame on them and the government lack of auditing. So imagine this on a weapons level. Very good point. Just get money out of politics. You know, as I mentioned on the show earlier today, Breach, I was a part of the Move to Amend organization. Let me show you. Oh, where is Move to Amend? Move to Amend. Let's see if it still exists. Move to Amend. And what Move to Amend does is we are working on an amendment. And I'm going to put that on the screen for you. Folks should check it out. Here we go. That organization has been working for years on the 28th Amendment. And the idea is money is not speech and corporations are not human beings. This website, I serve on the board for about 5 years on this particular campaign. Let's see. You must pay attention. The investigation comes to you. Mike Cisak, Bruce Pollard. When someone trades their skills for pay, that's not slavery. That's called work for trade. Yeah, but when there are laws that actually punk on you for that, it is slave labor. As I spoke to a few people on our show earlier today, we have to stop, and guys like you, Mike Cisak, have to stop defending the plutocracy. I mean, you are your worst enemy, and you prevent by doing that. You prevent us from moving forward, the poor and the middle class. And by the way, the film that you just saw there, I was an executive producer in that film as well. Just saying. Robert Davenport says the GOP made the mistake of thinking that because MAGA followers started saying the GOP quiet part out loud, that most people liked it. They're wrong. Most Americans are not hateful racists. Thank you very much for that, Robert Davenport. You're absolutely right. Bree says pay attention to all the investigations on Trump. But she calls him Rump. Likely and justifiably so. If I missed anything that you said or I didn't call out somebody that wants to be called out, we still have 3 minutes. Please let me know and I will be sure to do so. In the meantime, I don't have time to play my ass, so I'm going to ask all of you, whoever can, to please support our program. As you can see, we work hard to try to help be a part of making a change. Please support us at PayPal, politicsandright.com/PayPal. You can either do it one time or several times on a monthly basis or just one time. You can join us become one of our patrons. We need some patrons now. Thank you for calling out Team Ashley, Brother Davenport. She's doing fine. She's downstairs doing what? Cooking for her mother. To watch my daughter in that kitchen with one functional hand, and having to drag her left leg around. Guys, when she's working hard to get back more function on different parts of her body, as she's doing a whole lot of other things, when I tell you I'm proud of my baby, I am very proud of my daughter. No matter what happens, as far as, she wants to continue doing her boards. That's what she wants to do. She's done with school. She finished her med school. Now she's studying for her boards. I honor her. I really do. Anyway, you can support us at Patreon, politicsandright.com/Patreon. Patreon spelled Patreon. And likewise, you can go ahead and just click the join button. Become a part of our PDR Posse on YouTube. Click that join button. Please shop at our store. Buy your friends a Christmas gift that also helps promote our show. politicsandright.com/store. politicsandright.com/store. Bree says to watch your child go through this, so heartfelt. That's my baby. Love the baby. She's just doing what she's just doing it, man. Consider getting our books at politicsandright.com/books. All those are forms in which you can help us keep writing, keep speaking, keep the radio shows on. You guys have done a great job. Our KPFT family have really kept Politics Done Right on KPFT. That's on air. I mean, you've actually allowed me to have 3 days on KPFT every week, and you've allowed me to do this online and moving the message to your brothers, your sisters, your friends, your neighbors, your acquaintances. That is what it's going to take. So please support us on one of those links. You can find all our support links, or mostly all, I got to edit it, at politicsandright.com/support. Bree says, just stop with the blood pressure. Yes, ma'am. I promise you I will get my blood pressure in order. Happy Monday to the PDR Posse from Robert Davenport. We have 1 more minute to go. If anybody else put something in there for me to say real quickly, I'll be more than happy to do so. So stick something in the feed that you want to tell the PDR Posse and those that are listening to us at large. Just let us know what you want to tell your brothers and sisters in the PDR Posse. Anyway, we're going to be getting out of here pretty soon as I hear your last words. Dito, says Breach from Robert Davenport. Tomorrow, I may be a bit spent when we start our show. Me loves our PDR Posse because I'm going to be out at the Kingwood College. The Lone Star, actually, it's a Lone Star College here in Kingwood. I am actually going to be broadcasting Medea's speech to the school. And you'll be able to watch it at politicsandright.com, or rather, politicsandright.tv, I believe it is. politicsandright.tv. And then I'll rush back here to make sure that we can have our daily Politics Done Right. I got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.